Live of the weekend. Can't believe I'm doing two of these over what's supposed to be the days of rest, but there you go. Some of you may have watched the video I did yesterday with Firuza in Almaty, talking about the Lexical lab, teaching Lexically summer school. Today it's a very different kind of live. I'm going to be talking to actually someone I'm teaching at the moment, but someone who's also a remarkable teacher herself, Olena. I'll give you a bit of background about her in a minute, but first I just wanted to say thank you to everyone watching and thank you to people who join this live. There's obviously a lot going on in the world at the moment, and Trump's and Netanyahu's adventures in Iran are clearly going to be occupying a lot of the headlines in the days to come. Quite remarkable watching Trump go waging into a war with Iran, obviously a sign of the fact he's terrified of what's in the Epstein files. He's looking for an excuse to become more repressive at home and to, you know, I'm waiting for him to blame Iran for interfering in the 2020 election so that he can start to claim that there's Iranian terror groups threatening democracy in America so that he doesn't have to hold free and fair elections. But from someone who was awarded the FIFA Peace Prize and who keeps boasting about how many wars he stopped, here we are watching the US and Israel bomb the shit out of Iran suddenly. Obviously, I'm not shedding any tears for the Ayatollah, a man who has sent countless Shahed drones to Russia, which were then used to terrorize and kill Ukrainian citizens. But it's hard to imagine that this will lead to a democratic... It's hard to imagine Trump gives a shit about democracy in Iran, to be honest, or Netanyahu does. It's hard to imagine that any of this will lead to a kind of more prosperous and democratic future that I know millions of Iranians would like to see. But obviously, while all this is going on, what also happens is news headlines, energy, resources, military intelligence, people's attention gets dragged away from what's going on in Ukraine. And what's going on in Ukraine remains unchanged. Russia continues to try to pursue its maximalist goals in Ukraine. It continues to try to break Ukraine and break Ukrainians by freezing them, by trying to destroy civilian infrastructure, by targeting trains, by targeting the transport system and so on. And yet here we are now in the 5th year of the full-scale invasion, and Kiev still stands. Ukraine still stands, and Russia continues to waste billions and billions of pounds that could be used developing its own country on trying to kill its neighbours. So I see that Olena has asked to join, so I'm going to bring her in. And as we get going, I'll talk a bit more about, well, she'll talk a bit more about who she is and where she's from and some of the many remarkable things that she's involved in. Give me 1 second. Thanks to everyone joining. Great to have you with us. Hey, Olena.
Hello, Hugh. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
Not bad. Much better than a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
As you see, I have everything, all pleasures of modern life, electricity, heating, running water, everything. And the first day of spring, it means that yet another winter that Ukrainian was not supposed to go through is here. Yeah, so another winter has passed, and we are still alive and still fighting for our future.
Does it feel spring-like yet where you are or not?
I think it's more or less like spring. At least there is a spring mood in the air.
Yeah. And how long were you without power and water and heating and everything?
Well, I think that more than a month, for more than a month, actually. I didn't count days because it just, we got so accustomed to it that I think that every Ukrainian lady can give you like 100 pieces of advice how to dry your hair without a hair dryer. And
not a problem I have to worry about anymore, Olena.
then for you there will be recipes how to cook food without gas or electricity or anything. So I think we are much more adaptive, much more flexible right now. Not only psychologically, but also in our everyday life.
Yeah.
So I do not know what else is ahead, but I'm sure that Ukrainians will be able to adapt to it.
And where are you now, for people who don't know you? Or
right now I'm in Kiev. Yes, I'm in Kiev.
Okay, good to have you with us. So, if you don't mind, can we sort of begin by just you talking a little bit about your background, where you're from, because I think that was one of the reasons why I remember you talking about this in class one day, and just being really struck by some of what you were talking about. And I'm sorry to ask, because I know it must be a really painful and difficult thing to talk about, but I think it's important that people can hear these stories and understand them. So, if you don't mind, just a little bit about your background and where you're from. And
yeah, of course, I think that many Ukrainians can relate to my story, as now not only the Donetsk region, but a lot of territories of Ukraine are occupied by Russian terrorists. But I actually faced this loss, the loss of my home in 2014. It's almost 12 years ago. And I grew up and was raised in a totally Russian-speaking environment.
well, where was home originally? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bakhmut.
Okay.
Now I don't think it needs like more clarification and describing that now this small town, the name of it is familiar to people all around the world.
Yeah.
But then it was just a small provincial town where I grew up. All my family lived there, and of course, my childhood and my young years are, I have a strong bond with that place.
Well,
Okay.
what are your childhood memories of growing up in Bakhmut? What do you remember about
It
that
was
time?
always full of sunshine. It was a quiet, nice, really tranquil place. And many people say that among Donbas cities, the cities and towns of Donbas, it was one of the most, I do not know, friendly. It was really nice. Yeah, nothing else to say, because each town of somebody's childhood is full of those bright memories.
Yeah. Am I right in thinking Bakhmut has salt mines? Is that right?
Right. It is famous for its salt mines and for its sparkling wine plant.
Okay.
Yes, and it used to have a lot of industries there, like iron industry, machinery building. So it has been industrial. It has had industrial past.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like most of Donbass, I guess. Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What else can I say? That
And
now it is erased from the map. I try to avoid all those news, all those videos and news plots, news videos about what is it like, and at the time that it had been under constant shellings,
yeah.
and our defenders were defending it very bravely, and many of my students were among them. For
But
me,
you said you left initially in 2014, right?
I left yes, the Donetsk region, but then I already lived in Donetsk.
Okay.
But my family still stayed in Bakhmut. Yeah.
Okay. So you were in Donetsk in 2014 when the first kind of Russian occupation, stealth
Yes,
occupation happened there.
exactly right. So I witnessed the first days of occupation when I was in Donetsk, and I saw those strange people in balaclavas in the streets of Donetsk, and it was, it developed gradually and happened suddenly.
Yeah.
They say so. That's why at that time we didn't pay much attention to that. We thought that it would pass. It won't like affect our lives. We pretended that nothing was happening. Many people who were still there. Yeah, but
Were you working in Donetsk or
yeah,
studying?
of course. Yeah, I worked as a teacher. I worked for different language schools, and at that time I had already set up my own project. And actually, I had never thought that I would have to go somewhere from Donetsk and the Donetsk region, because I just connected all my life and all my future to that region. It was my homeland.
Yeah. And when did it become obvious to you, or did it become obvious to you what was happening in Donetsk?
Yes, it did. It became obvious after the so-called referendum that they organized in May, and then I think all those proponents of the occupation celebrated their victory. Yeah, they were already celebrating during the referendum, and I saw it with my own eyes. I saw all those, I don't know how to call them, like people who I didn't want to live together in one city with. You see, and then it became obvious that nothing good is yes, nothing good can happen to this city and to this region if they come to power. Yeah, and then when it became obvious, and when the Russians were gathering their forces already and surrounding Donetsk, so I understood that it's time to flee. It's time to go somewhere, anywhere. Because it was the last day when I could do it without danger for my life. Because after that, all the exits from the city were blocked. There were roadblocks. There were checkpoints. Everything was militarized, like in a day.
Were there people that you knew who ended up siding with the Russians at that point?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of people. That's why when now people ask me, why do you have so few childhood friends? I say because many of people who I used to know, who I used to study with, my former, I do not know, schoolmates or fellow students who studied together with me, they actually joined the other side. Some of them actually now are building some careers there in the so-called republics in the East.
Yeah. I think they're now, are they still officially republics, or are they now just supposed to be part of the Russian Federation?
I have no idea. Yeah, of course, this terminology matters, how they call themselves, how others call them. but yes, I think all those names make no sense, because they are in fact parts of Ukraine which are now occupied by Russian terrorists.
What do you think it was about Donetsk and Lugansk that led to people from that region deciding that it was better to side with the Russian invaders? Or some people. Obviously, lots of people didn't.
Yeah, I believe that it was this Russian-speaking, Russian culture environment that actually was, I don't know. Okay, just to describing my childhood, I never spoke Ukrainian. I never read anything in Ukrainian. Yes, I knew that we live in Ukraine, but I never like associated myself with Ukraine. I thought that Russian Ukraine is something like the same as a child.
Yeah.
And of course, we didn't have any examples of real Ukrainian culture. We didn't have Russian-speaking or Ukrainian-speaking people around. The first real Ukrainian-speaking person appeared in my life already when I moved to Kyiv, because before that nobody spoke Ukrainian, so there were no role models. And all the media, all the entertainment that we had was connected, was produced by Russians. Everything was the Russian speaking. That's why language is so important for our mental picture. So my mental picture, and I believe that the picture of all my, how to call them, people from those regions.
Yeah, contemporaries or
contemporaries. Yeah, was totally Russificated.
Wow. Yeah, and I guess living in that kind of information environment, you're going to be subjected to all of the messaging that's coming out of Russia and all of the promises and all of the stories about who you're dealing with.
Yeah, exactly. So there was no cultural or national identity in people of our regions, because that's why it was so easy for them to wage their information war, that cognitive warfare through social media, through television, even through movies that affected our self consciousness so much. We didn't have a position. We were just neutral, small people, and they want everyone to be small people.
Yeah.
And we were actually.
Yeah, we're just little people. What can we do?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard it thousands of times from people I used to know in Russia. Yeah. And so you left in 2014, and where did you go initially, Olena? Did you go to Kyiv immediately, or?
I went to Bakhmut because at that time I still had a vague hope that probably it would all settle down and I would return to my home in Donetsk, because of course you deny at such a stressful moment, we tend to deny the reality, and everything will be all right. And actually, I had this naive hope, but after several weeks did I realize that I would never come back home. Because I saw the contingent, the people, the citizens of the republics who stayed there, who chose to be a part of it on TV. And then for me, this point of no return was the crash of the
Malaysian airliner.
Of the Malaysian airliner.
MH17, yeah.
Exactly right. It
Yeah.
happened like 30 kilometers away from my place. I was there at that time, and then this, this understanding that all these horrible things take place just 30 kilometers, not so far, not so
And,
far away. Um,
and for people who don't know the geography, how far, so from 2014 to say 2022, you had this kind of so-called frozen conflict.
yeah.
How far was Bakhmut at that point from the front line?
The gray zone just was, I don't know. I think the border of Bakhmut was the gray zone already,
Yeah,
because
okay.
I accompanied some soldiers and some foreign representatives when they arrived with their official trips to Bakhmut. So I accompanied them there, and the gray zone was already like you drive out of Bakhmut, and you see already
Yeah.
something which looks like not front line, but it's very
Kind of
close.
like the no man's land, basically, yeah?
Yes, exactly. And for people who stayed there for years, they got used to explosions,
Yeah.
some features that are not common for people in peaceful places.
Yeah. And when did you realize that the Russians were using what was happening in Donbass for their own propaganda? Because, I mean, I know that the whole idea of, liberating our people, and the Ukrainians are crucifying upside down children on crosses, and
Oh
all of
yes.
this kind of insane Russian propaganda that started to be created around that time. I
Yeah.
know that was very prevalent inside Russia, that propaganda. When did you start to become aware of the fact that there was this kind of huge propaganda war going on around where you'd been living?
Um, I think when the Revolution of Dignity started,
Okay,
because
2014,
then
2013.
I cannot say that I was politically aware or I was interested, but that was time when we started watching the news, and somehow, keep I kept myself updated what's going on. And it was a time when it became like clear that what we see and what they tell about it are like two different realities.
Yeah, yeah. And so back in 2014, you're back in Bakhmut, and your family are still there.
Yeah.
And what then happened for you after that?
After that, I understood that uh, I have to start my life from scratch, and I decided to move to Kyiv, and I did so. My family didn't support me then. They believed that Kyiv is full of, cruel nationalists.
Who were going to kill you for speaking Russian?
Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah. So it was a tough
Uh,
time for me as a displaced person, because then, internally displaced people, especially from the Donbas region, were not very much welcome in
yeah.
Kyiv.
I mean, I know from talking to other people, there was this kind of feeling among people in Kiev, and I guess particularly in places like Lviv, that somehow you were responsible for what had happened, and that you'd invited the Russians in, and now that you were coming to Kiev or wherever, it was going to bring more problems.
Right, there were many opinions, um, and it was for me as a young girl, yeah, as a young person who just lost her home, and I was under much pressure to go to the capital, having almost no one here to rely on, and it was almost like next to impossible to rent an apartment, rent a flat, because the first thing they asked is it was your passport, it was your registration, and people didn't even listen to me if I tried to explain something. No, they just gave me the cold shoulder and ignored
Wow.
all what I tried to say. So it was like I felt an outcast in my own country.
Yeah.
It was, but in terms of teaching, professional wise, yeah, can we say so?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I was an asset for many companies because at that time I already had a number of international certificates and high qualifications. So I've got plenty of offers as soon as I posted my resume online.
So
And
you could find a job but nowhere to live.
yes, exactly. But I am sure that none of those potential employers would be willing to give me, to lend me their flat or, yeah. That's it. That's how I started from scratch.
I forgot to ask you, like, how you became a teacher in the first place, and what your route to English was, and what your route to teaching was.
My route to teaching,
Yeah.
well, do you think anyone is interested really on somebody's
Yeah, of
route to
course, of
teaching?
course. Yeah.
Okay, the thing is that my grandmother was a teacher of English, and she, when I was 3 years old, I could cite, some poems in English, and I knew a lot of words. So
This is having teachers in the family. They force you to do all this weird stuff. Yeah.
do you also do it with your children? But
Of
your
course.
children speak English without that. Yeah. So my grandmother had very profound influence on me and my career. Of course, her methods were not modern grammar translation, and so she didn't quite understand what we are doing online, what was going on in my online language center. But still, I took her as a role model, very devoted to teaching, to the progress of her students, and like being kind to them, no matter what results they had.
It's a
Yeah.
very underrated quality in a teacher, I think, kindness.
Yes,
You know.
kindness and tolerance and acceptance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think a lot of teachers get sucked into being frustrated that they don't have the perfect class, and it's like you teach the people that are put in front of you. It's like all kinds of different human beings that are put in front of you, and you have to work with them. Yeah.
Exactly. I believe that true professionalism of a teacher is to be able to find like suitable tools for anyone,
Yeah.
not only for perfect, motivated
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones you don't need to
students.
worry about. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So then 2014, 2015, you're in Kyiv, you're getting loads of job offers. I'm guessing you eventually found somewhere to live.
Yes, I found a place, right? And then of course um, this hostility against hostile attitude towards people from Donbass, it like faded, and there were more opportunities for me to build my career, to kind of get acquainted with the teaching sphere here in Kyiv. So
And
that's,
at this point, I'm guessing, were you still speaking Russian mostly in Kyiv?
yes, I was
Because,
speaking Russian.
yeah,
I tried. I
despite your
tried.
parents' paranoia, Kyiv was a very Russian-speaking city at this point. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay. When I moved, I made an attempt to switch to Ukrainian, but it was hard for me because, as I have mentioned earlier, I had no role models.
Yeah.
I had nothing to rely on because all my background, yeah, you can speak a language, but if you have nothing to speak about, if you
Yeah.
do not know the culture, if there is nothing behind it, just the form, then it's hard to speak this language every day in your everyday communication. And for me, I didn't have this, you know, this basic level of understanding the speakers of this language.
Yeah.
So I made a try, but other people were mocking me, were it was funny. Those attempts were really hilarious, but it discouraged me and demotivated me greatly. So I abandoned my tries because it was comfortable and safe, and well, so easy to speak Russian. So
And so,
why do I have to put more pressure on myself?
yeah, yeah. And at this point, were you still going backwards and forwards to Bakhmut? Were you still visiting family,
Yeah, I
or?
visited my parents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, during those years, Bakhmut has it became like a military place. There
yes,
were a military unit stationed because, as we have discussed with you before, there was like gray zone front lines very,
yes,
very near.
yeah. And did you keep in touch with anyone that you used to know from Donetsk, or was that completely severed?
Of course, yes, we were in touch for some period, but then everyone was trying to, live their own life, to
Yeah,
to build new career, to start new identity.
yeah,
That's why not many connections survived till this present day.
yeah. And so I guess from say sort of 2015 to 2021, you have a few kind of fairly quiet, fairly successful sort of years of getting settled in Kyiv and
Yeah, that's true.
creating new social networks and working and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It was a time when I worked hard on my business. I got a couple of more certificates like proficiency, and I got CELTA 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Time flies. Yeah, so actually, yeah, I was focused on my career, on my business, on my social life, and little did I think about what language I speak,
Yeah.
or what's going on with Russia. So I cannot say that I was completely careless or irresponsible, because all that time, since 2014, I was an internally displaced
Yeah.
person. And then, of course, for me, those issues were quite important to track. And
Did you end up meeting any other kind of internally displaced people while you were in Kyiv?
yes, of
Yeah,
course.
because I imagine there must be a kind of a shared understanding or a shared experience in those situations that makes it easier
Yeah.
to bond a bit more quickly sometimes. Yeah.
Yes, it was kind of a, diaspora,
Yeah.
local diaspora of
Yeah.
people who were displaced from the Donetsk and the Luhansk region, and the Crimea, of course.
Yeah. 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 And so I guess by this point you said you were running your own business. Yeah.
That's right. I have an online language center.
Okay. You were ahead of the game doing that, starting quite early. Yeah.
Yeah, I started in 2011,
Okay.
and and at that
15 years
time,
ago.
yes, it was so long ago. At that time, it was the main problem for us, for me, was to explain people that it's safe and actually effective to learn online,
Yeah.
to have online English classes, because at
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
time it was something completely cutting edge. People didn't understand how it works, something like magic. Yeah, but these days we face another problem to explain people the criteria of a good teacher,
Yeah.
because now everywhere we can see things like free English,
Yeah.
free
Yeah.
English for Ukrainians,
Yeah.
and people, you know, this idea gets fossilized in their mind that English can be free,
Yeah.
that teaching doesn't cost money.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
have to pay for it. It's unfair, and I think that we should do something with it.
There are many different ways that people can learn that in life you get what you pay for, um, or you get what you don't pay for, you know. And I guess people need to learn that the hard way sometimes. It's like,
Uh,
right, you know.
yes, they do, but while they are learning, we don't get we don't get our income.
Yeah, this is the other problem. Uh, and so, talk me through your experience of early 2022.
Um, for me, it was I was anxious and agitated because I had already known what it is like. Yes, and for me, it didn't come as a complete surprise when the invasion started. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't like, I cannot say that in terms of fight or flight options. I think I froze at first, but after that, I decided not to flee, because it was my strategy in 2014 to flee. But this time I decided to stay and to help and to do anything that I was capable of doing in that situation.
And so, back in the early stages of sort of February, March 2022, you had this situation where the Russians came within, what, like 30, 40 miles of Kyiv, basically, yeah? And they were shelling Kyiv a lot. And so you were in the city at a time when lots of other people were fleeing and there was ongoing shelling and
Yes.
uncertainty, yeah?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And you said that the day before the full-scale invasion, you decided to stop using Russian. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
It was the time when, you know, this, you know, some piece of news, or I do not remember what it was, but it was the last straw. And I decided that from today, yes, so I declared, I posted like notification to send it to my friends that today is the day, and yeah, so now I am a Ukrainian speaker. Of course, my Ukrainian was very bad. My articulation and vocabulary was very narrow, but I thought that if I don't start right now, I I will never do that.
And do you feel more at home in the language now? I mean, you were saying earlier about how, you know, you can speak a language as a kind of surface level thing, but you don't
Yeah,
feel like you're
yeah.
on the inside of the language. You know, I mean, I know this feeling very well with my foreign languages, where it's like I can get by, but I don't feel like I'm kind of in the language. And how has that changed for you?
I think for half a year I got by.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then I immersed myself in the language, in the content, because a lot of Ukrainian speaking YouTube channels
yeah.
or podcasts emerged, and I took advantage of that, and I yeah, really immersed myself in reading, in listening, and then it became much better.
And around this time, you also started working with the military. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Would you want to say a bit more about that and how you got into that and what that involved for you?
Well, after several attempts to be useful, because at first I organized a community of volunteer drivers
Okay.
who helped, yeah, people from Kiev and from the Kiev region with evacuations, with transportations. They were mainly women with children and the elderly. But then when the Battle of Kiev, when after the Battle of Kiev, yeah, after the deoccupation of the Kiev region, we understood that, and it was clear that the danger moved to the east and to the south, or probably to the north. Not moved, but it remained there. But
Yeah.
the capital was much safer than at the beginning, in the first days. Then it was clear that I should employ myself somewhere else. And it was the time when some friends of mine asked me for help, because they, as military officers, as commanders, were receiving weaponry, sorry, and a lot of aid from our foreign partners.
Yeah.
And to communicate, sorry, and to operate it effectively, of course, they needed to read the documentation and to communicate with the representatives. And our military units were flooded with journalists. Yeah. Not units, but where it was permitted. Yeah. So that's why for them, this language, that's communicative competence, was really vital at that time.
Yeah.
So knowing that
and what kind of starting point were most of the people you were working with at? Like, what kind of level was their English already?
Well, that particular volunteer unit that was the first unit where I worked, they had really low level, like beginner.
Yeah. Okay.
But now, of course, the situation is totally different.
About those guys, yeah.
Yeah, they were military guys. They were not communicators. So that's why for me it was so challenging to make them speak at least at a basic level. But many of them had considerable progress during the course. I talked to them.
Were you doing this initially on a volunteer basis?
Initially, yes, for a year and a half, because on one hand, at that time there is this wave of volunteers that it was almost, not impolite, but it was so rude to do something and ask money for that. When you do something for the military and then you ask money for that, it was the first period, of course. Yeah. And at that time, I think I had some features of this imposter syndrome when I was totally new to this sphere. Yeah, let's say new to this sphere, because I have no military education. I had never been trained for any military courses or trainings. So again, I had to start from scratch. That's the motto of my life.
And how did you work out what kind of English they needed and what their needs were, and how did you go about putting courses together and all of that?
I conducted needs analysis.
Yeah.
And develop an English for specific purposes course for them, because initially they didn't need much in terms of communicating. They had to resolve some definite tasks, in their communication with the foreigners.
Yeah. And was there much contact at that point between, because I know initially, especially, there were lots of foreigners who came to fight to help Ukraine defend itself. And were they all put generally into international brigades, or were they sometimes intermixed with Ukrainian brigades, or how did it work?
Sure. Yeah, there were a lot of foreigners, even in the battalion where I taught. Um, they were foreigners from different countries, some from the Foreign Legion, you know, under some nicknames, always in balaclavas. So yeah, there were many foreigners, but I think after that there were some, they restructured the system, and foreigners go to units which are designed specifically for them.
Yeah, and I mean, presumably the foreign regiments or foreign battalions were also using English as a lingua franca, I'm guessing.
That's true. That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
A friend of mine served in one of those foreign legions as a commander, and he told me a lot of stories how the English language was really like a thing of survival or death
Yeah.
for his soldiers.
Yeah.
And it is the time when I started. It was the time when I started. Doing those videos, yeah, and launched my YouTube channel. And for them, he told me it was really really a chance to you know, increase the survivability of his personnel.
Yeah. 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 And when did you become aware of other people who were doing similar kinds of things to you? I mean, when did you become aware of other English teachers who were working with the military, and was there a kind of network of teachers who were talking to each other, or were you all kind of operating in isolation, or what?
Well, actually, in Ukraine, there are not so many teachers who teach the military. Uh, in 2022, when I started working with the military personnel, at that time, I started looking for some materials or some, I don't know, course books, but there was nothing that I would be suitable for my students.
Yeah.
So I understood that I have to create my own materials, my own lesson plans, or something like sort of a textbook for them. Of course, now I have a base of materials because for 5 years I've taught different branches and different units.
And when did what you were doing as a volunteer kind of morph into something bigger or something more widespread? How did that work?
Right. So I think this division happened when I decided that my social or volunteer share of my activity will be my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Because there are like 100 quality video lessons with explanations, with examples that can be used as a course for some independent learners.
And what were you making these as bilingual videos?
Yeah, these are bilingual videos where I provide explanations mainly in Ukrainian, knowing the language. Yeah. Yes, mainly in Ukrainian, but the examples are in English.
Okay.
Because I know the audience, and that's the way they, which is effective for them.
Yeah.
If they want more English input, they should go to some foreign channels or native speakers. So yeah, and what I teach, courses that I teach in groups, courses that I develop particularly and especially for some units, or I teach face-to-face. That's my teaching practice. That's my job, actually.
And so, I'm sorry to have to ask this, but I'm thinking a lot about how you're trying to do all this amazing work where you're setting up these courses and you're creating things from scratch and you're doing all this needs analysis. And at the same time, you're doing this against a backdrop of terrible loss. Because, I mean, for people outside of Ukraine who maybe don't remember, the battle for Bakhmut, your hometown, was what? It was sort of like August 2022 to about May 2023, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was one of the biggest and bloodiest land battles in Europe since the Second World War. And so while you're setting up all of this and doing all of this volunteer work, you're doing it in the knowledge that your hometown is in the epicenter of this horrific battle, yeah?
Well, yes, that time was very difficult, was very stressful for me because, yeah, on one hand, I had to keep up with my projects, had to teach people, and yes, to somehow support myself. But at the same time, this news, it was really devastating when people, and I think I told you this story, when people thought that I should be informed about any like piece of news about Bakhmut.
Yeah.
And they kept sending me those pictures, those I do not know, videos, because for many people who haven't experienced war and such losses, such feelings, these are just buildings, those are just streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know who lived in those buildings. I know whose windows those are, and what used to be there, where now you can see this huge crater.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I used to walk those pavements and roads and squares, and that was my home. And it's hard to explain people that we can lose and we can feel this grief not only when we lose, when someone passes away, when people are killed or people die, but also when some part of your life is just destroyed. And I do not know how to deal with it, because it's something that cannot be buried, that cannot be just forgotten. You just live with it.
It's like someone kind of poisoning all of your memories and poisoning a whole part of your life. And I remember interviewing someone else in one of the lives, and they were saying just realizing things like they'll never be able to go back and visit the graves of their parents, and
Yes,
the place where they had their first kiss is now sort of under occupation, and all those kinds of memories and emotions that most people take for granted, and that if you want to, you can always go back and just retrace your steps when you're older or whatever, just being completely taken away from you. Yeah,
that's yeah, that describes it very well. But one thing is, when it is under occupation, it still exists, it's still there. But in my case, it's not even there.
Yeah, I mean, for people who don't know, I mean, Bakhmut basically, like many Ukrainian towns and villages, no longer exists. I mean, if you look at Google Earth, it's basically a desert. It's destroyed. It's a city that no longer exists. The Russians have wiped it off the face of the earth. And I remember you saying in class that in some ways that's easier to live with than the idea of it being occupied.
I think, well, for me, it's hard to form this idea. I try not to think about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to ask.
But answering the question you asked me earlier, how it was to combine those two sides, those two ideas.
Yeah.
I think that it gives me more motivation in my work, in my struggle, because I do not belong to the armed forces of Ukraine, but I think I contribute to their strength, to their education, to their training. That's why, for me, all those things, they just, consolidate my position, make it more steady, and make me more, motivated. And not inspired, but maybe even inspired, yes, to move further, not to stop, because I first time I faced it 12 years ago, and I know what it is, not from the TV stories and reports, but there are still people who do not imagine it.
Yeah.
And they are like, I sometimes think that they are like babies, and I think it's in our nature that it's hard to be concerned about anything that doesn't affect you directly. It's like many Western people right now.
Yeah, I can't remember where I read it, but I read something about the luxury of the unbombed.
Yeah.
And that when you're living a life where you're not being bombed, you're still kind of like seeing no evil, hearing no evil, thinking it's all to do with something over there that's not going to affect you, and
Yeah.
it's easy to stay in that state. And if you don't mind me asking, what happened with your parents, or your family there?
My parents are okay. They managed to evacuate from Bakhmut, and now they are internally displaced.
Yeah.
Yes,
Are you still in touch? Do you talk a lot?
Yeah, of course, right. We are still in touch. We support each other, and now I think they have changed many
I
of
was going to
their
say, I mean,
views.
that's a fairly concrete way of making people change their perceptions, I guess. Yeah. And so, at the same time as you've got all of this going on, you're also must be losing people that you've worked with. You sent me a picture of yourself with one of the first groups that you were working with, and you said that most of the people in that picture had now been killed in action.
Yeah, the picture you posted on Facebook, that's right.
Yeah.
The majority of them were killed in action, and when they ask me about what is the most difficult part of teaching the military, so I understand that I'm supposed to answer like something like acronyms or terminology or creating courses, but in fact the most challenging aspect of it is that some of them are no longer alive, and that we might lose, they might be killed in the future because they're in the military, and many of them are currently on the front lines, and they have their lessons sitting in some bunkers or some shelters or command posts, and I think that differentiate. That's a difference between a teacher and an instructor. So as an instructor, you realize that you train people, but as a teacher, you're kind to them. The teaching is a little bit different from being an instructor. So in this case, when I work with the military, I regard myself, I think that now I'm an instructor, and it helps me to be more tolerant to this fact, to this.
And do you usually get informed by people you've worked with when someone that you've instructed or someone you've taught has been killed?
Sometimes I find out from the social media. Sometimes, yes, I'm informed that someone is wounded in action or killed in action or missing in action. There are groups like group chats, some of my old group chats, and once I wrote something there, like I don't remember, and one of the guys replied that unfortunately, like the majority of our group will not read this. And later I discovered that yeah, the majority of this group of those students who served in the same platoon were killed in action. And they were like 20, 21, 22 years old. Teenagers, in fact, very young people.
Kids.
Kids, yes.
And how, maybe it's a stupid question, but how do you deal with this yourself? I mean, how do you stay human and positive and optimistic and you know yourself, given all of the loss that you're seeing around you and that you've experienced?
That's so hard. I don't have an answer to this question. Once, yeah, of course, I have a lot of support from my students, from my friends, from my family too. We all experience the same thing, and so it's very like significant and essential to have someone to complain and to moan and to tell about everything. At some point, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, I mobilized all my abilities, all my power, or everything that I had, in order to help, in order to fulfill my mission.
Yeah.
And to contribute to this war effort, yeah, to be useful in this fight for our democracy, for all that future world and life for Ukraine. But then I experienced a huge setback. Yes, is it setback?
Yeah.
When I just wasted all my energy, and it was a time when I realized, and I had to admit to the fact that I was just a human. I was just a human with my own capabilities, with my own limits. And,
yeah, I can imagine it must be hard to allow yourself to feel your own vulnerabilities and your own limitations, because there must be a desire to just keep pushing forwards.
right,
And at some point you have to just say, okay, if I'm going to go any further forward, I need to stop for a bit. Yeah,
that's right. Because all people suffered from some guilt here in Ukraine. They blame themselves for doing not enough. They craved for doing more, for pushing themselves. But of course, at the beginning, it helped us survive. To survive. That's why so many people survived actually in Kyiv and in other regions, because their society wasn't passive.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a remarkable thing about Ukraine, this kind of, that one of my other Ukrainian friends once said, Ukraine is like a kind of democracy of anarchists. And I think that kind of self-help and mutual aid, you know, I know it has deep roots in Ukraine, that kind of thinking. And I've just been reading this book behind me about Nestor Makhno, and that whole kind of, I don't know, desire to not be ruled by anyone in particular, but to work out among yourselves what needs to be done. That seems to be a very deep-rooted part of Ukrainian culture.
Yes, it's kind of our collective memory, which is totally different from the collective memory of Russian. That's why we are not the same people.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this next, about how your understanding of all of that's changed, because, you know, you were saying when you were growing up, you had this idea that it was all basically kind of one culture and one place, and you were in your Russian bubble. And how have you now come to understand Russia and Ukraine's relationship with Russia?
Of course, now it's obvious for everyone who has intelligence that Russia is the enemy, not only the enemy of Ukraine, but the enemy of all democratic world. Air raid alert. I hope that today they won't bomb us.
Do you need to go?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Normally we check what kind of attack it
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
drone attack or missile attack. But yeah, what I was going to say is that obviously, and looking at those two realities, comparing them, this, you know, a reality that they distorted world in which they live and where I used to live, it's like awakening. It's like awakening after some long disease. And you look at yourself, you look back, you look at the past, at your childhood, your formative years, and realize how those narratives were implemented and were put in my mind, in minds of people in Ukraine. But now many people have those eye-opening, you know, moments. For some people, they are books. For some, YouTube podcasts or programs or movies
Mm.
or whatever. Now Ukrainian culture is reviving, and it also helps people to find their way back to their roots, to their real background, not the background that was constructed by the Soviets, which aimed at erasing all the Ukrainian identity and all the Ukrainian features, from language to culture to some you know, people who developed
Yeah,
Ukrainian world.
yeah.
So I was one of those just who read a book, watched a program, and then put this puzzle together and understood that I don't want to live like this. I do not want to be a part of, because we had a choice. Because people tend to say that we were not given a choice. We were given a choice. We could choose a side. Uh, and some of them just used this choice. Some of us still didn't use this.
I think in my own way, I had a similar kind of forced reassessment of things because I think, as you know, I mean, I first went to Russia in 1999. I spent 20 years traveling all over the country. I
Yeah.
used to know a lot of people. I have a whole shelf here of books that I've read about Russia, and I think it took, I was studying Russian for a while. It took 2022 for me to realize how I'd been conditioned to see everything through a kind of Muscovite prism, you know, and how actually the whole of Europe, I think, hadn't been paying enough attention to the voices of the people who knew the Russians best. And, you
Yeah.
know, the Finns and the Estonians and the Ukrainians and the Georgians and all of these people who had been sort of shouting warnings that had been drowned out by, you know, Russia's ability to project soft power, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, one of the things that happened again in 2022 was sort of realizing quite quickly that that's kind of what was going on. And like you said, feeling that it was impossible to be neutral, feeling that there is no neutral position. For me, the war made things very, very binary. You know, it just made it like, well, there's two sides and only one of them's going to win. And this idea of a compromise or
Mm-hmm.
you know, a deal is just fiction and fantasy. And I wanted it to be very clear myself. And, you know, hasn't been a great business decision, but
Of
it's
course.
it's been very important for me morally and as a human to be able
Yes.
to
I
feel that.
I can relate because my business, I also did business with Russians. A lot of my clients were from Russia. But again, the day of the invasion, 2022, it made it, yeah, black and white, binary. If you are Russian, we are not going to work with you. It was not, as you say, a good business decision, but for me as a Ukrainian, uh, it's impossible to sit on the fence. It's impossible to to sit on both chairs.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And how do you feel now when you see what's happening with the rest of Europe and the sort of wider West in relation to the conflict, and what encourages you and what worries you still, I guess, in terms of what you're seeing from the rest of Europe?
Well, first of all, let's not call it a conflict.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yes,
Slip of the tongue.
yes, and you know, yesterday I had an answer. No, on Friday, on Friday I had an answer. But then, after all these attacks on Iran, and not attacks, they call it campaign. They don't call it a full-fledged war, and they are very careful in their terminology. But on one hand, this American terminology allowed Russia to step back from supporting Iran, which is good. Yes. I think there are many thoughts I would like to share with our Western friends. So first of all, the Russians are very clever and very inventive. And what we see they are doing now, they are pretending to be a victim in this war. And at first they were silent, but now we can hear some voices and we can see some of their representatives who are trying to pretend to be that boy on cross, you know. And they are producing multiple cultural products.
Yeah.
They put with affiliation with some organizations or with some companies, which puts them in this light of a victim, that they suffer too. They are just small people who don't choose its fate, its regime, and so on. One of the I was quite shocked when I discovered that BBC movie that I think you are aware of it, when a BBC journalist went to the front lines, but not Ukrainians, but Russian front lines, to show the life of ordinary Russian
They've made this movie
boys.
recently about how terrible life is for Russian conscripts.
Terrible life for Russian mercenaries who volunteered to go to war to kill innocent Ukrainians, occupy their sovereign territories. Poor boys. Another thing, quite like last week's example, was this BAFTA award.
Yeah, the Mr. Nobody against
Mr.
Putin.
Nobody, yes. For people who do not know what it is it's a movie, like a documentary made by a Russian teacher who combined his experiences in one documentary, how the Russian education system is affected by Putin's regime and how they are forced to actually nurture the next generation of mercenaries, killers, soldiers, and those who will invade, but maybe not even Ukraine, but some other countries, maybe the countries of those representatives who voted for this documentary. Yes, it might happen. So I think...
I mean, I've seen that documentary, and on one level, it's a very chilling portrayal of what happens when an education system slips into complete totalitarian militarization. But what worried me about it was it kind of dodges the question of individual responsibility.
That's right.
You know, and I think that's very dangerous. So it's kind of just slightly out of the picture, that whole side of things about, well, people are choosing to be part of this. You know, you're not yourself, and hats off to you for not being part of it yourself. Well done. But you're filming people who are choosing to be part of it. Right. And you're not talking much about that.
Exactly. So he's himself, he's a part of it. And that's, again, about this point of no return, when you realize that you are not a subject, you're not a puppet that can be manipulated by, I do not know, by some leader or by some system or by some regime, but you're an independent and mature individual who can take this responsibility, and it's time to take it. Some people, again, pretend to be helpless in this situation.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of their personal responsibility. And in the West, they tend to say that it's Putin's war, Putin, and they keep repeating his name.
Yeah.
But in fact, the correct way of saying, of referring to this war and to this country is that it's not only the leader, it's the whole terroristic country. It's in their blood, it's in their character, it's their national idea to invade other territories, to make themselves great again and again and again, and they never become great. You know, they have never been great, but they are trying to do it again, to live in the past. So they are dragging the world to the past. If we look at the occupied territories, those republics that Donetsk, that used to be a prosperous, rich, an amazing city.
Struggling to have water there now, yeah?
They don't have anything there. Yeah, they don't have anything.
Yeah.
It's beyond, you know, it's very unhuman conditions.
I think a lot of people in the West don't understand that Russia deliberately weaponizes culture as a way of deflecting attention away from Russia's war crimes. You know, they see it as two separate things. They see it as, well, surely I can still read Dostoevsky and you know, whatever. Yes. You know, go and watch the Bolshoi Ballet if it comes to London or whatever it is. That they see that as a separate thing somehow. Whereas I think Russians themselves, I mean, I remember early on in the full-scale invasion, the director of the Hermitage talking about how culture was part of, you know, they have a cultural special operation or a special cultural operation, and that it was part of the process of winning hearts and minds in the West. I think I told you I went to see Mariam Naim in London last week, sort of Ukrainian activist, and she said one of the most shocking things for her still is when she does talks in Europe, people will come up to her afterwards and say, it's terrible what's happening, we're so sorry for you, how can we save Russia? And that you know, they ask a Ukrainian who's been living through all of the horrors that Russia's inflicted on them, how can we save Russia? And she was saying that the only way she can understand why people would still even think that this is an okay thing to ask is because of the influence of Russian soft power and Russian culture, and that they've absorbed all of that, and they kind of care about the country because they care about the culture. And I think when you understand that's the effect the culture is supposed to have. It's supposed to make you care about the country and therefore be more lenient on it, you know?
Because their knowledge about the country is limited.
Yeah.
And they know only those representatives, only very remarkable and outstanding people of Russia, but they don't go deeper. They are reluctant to dig deeper and to find out some dirt just which is hidden behind those nice and beautiful pictures of Russian powerful and great culture. In fact, many things in that culture were stolen from others. Like Pushkin, he stole his ideas from Byron, and there are plenty of examples, but people are lazy or just reluctant to unsee what they already see, and to accept the fact, to embrace the fact that what is beautiful and what you used to love is not always something good and friendly.
Yeah. And how do you think you and people you know and other Ukrainians feel about the support or the help you're getting from Europe at the moment? Because, you know, I know one of the feelings in Europe that some people will say is, oh, how much more do we have to give them? We've given them loads and loads. What else do they want? We can't just destroy our own economies helping them. How do you feel that people in Ukraine are feeling about what the West and Western Europe is doing?
Well, for years, Europe was deeply concerned, and they were talking and talking and talking. And actually, I'm not an expert on that, and I can rely only on my own judgment. That Europe, it used to be quite passive, because those generations who witnessed, or at least were closer to the end of the Second World War, so the modern generations are quite passive. They rely on democracy, they trust in democracy, and they don't even believe that, sometimes they don't even believe that what's going in Ukraine is true, and that it can somehow interfere within their lives.
Yeah.
But now, since Trump has taken power, and he started his
Campaigns.
let it be so, yes, his campaigns, his peaceful activities around the world. And I think it was, on one hand, of course, it's not good news for Ukraine, but on the other hand, it was a wake-up call for the European countries, that now see that NATO doesn't actually cannot actually rely on its main stakeholder, main partner, and they have to take their individual responsibility. And now we can see that the countries that are more familiar with the Soviet practices, such as Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Finland also, I think, is
the better part of Poland.
Better part of Poland. So they have already started their preparations, because even if the aggressor is stopped for a while and the conflict is frozen, what we can see, not only from our war here in Ukraine, but also from history, that the aggressor or his partners, I do not know, his allies, would resume the war again.
Lena, can you just wait 1 minute? I just have to get the door.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. Sorry, it's probably my son coming home. Give me 1 second.
All right.
I'll be back.
Okay. I see that there are 14 people watching this. Good. 15 people watching this. I hope you don't regret that you decided to spend this time with us here.
Okay. Sorry. Hey. So just wanted to finish off with a couple of questions, really. One is, obviously there's been a lot of talk about peace talks and making a deal, because Mr. Trump is the king of the deal, which is obviously why he's got a deal in Iran. And I wondered, I talk to a lot of people here in the UK, and people often ask, oh, it's terrible. How do you think it will end? And I know what my answer is. I wondered what you think about the idea of a possible deal, about compromising, about how does it end? How does it end?
Well, it's too difficult for me. I'm just an ordinary Ukrainian lady, and I have no idea. But I can tell you a story. Half a year ago, when I think you remember that episode when Trump invited Putin to
Alaska.
Alaska, and there
Yeah,
was
I
this
thought
red
maybe he
carpet.
was going to offer to give him Alaska back to the Russians to make a deal, but apparently he didn't do that.
Yeah. So there was this red carpet reception, which
Yeah,
is absolutely disgusting
yeah, yeah.
and so humiliating for the U.S. military personnel who had to
Yes.
roll out this carpet before this, before Putin. And so on that day, I was invited to give an interview, give a talk on CNN Live. And I was like, I was furious. I was furious because what was going on because of this. Like Trump actually destroyed everything, all this attitude towards Russia that existed before.
Yeah, yeah, he kind of
He turned it
normalized
upside
him leaving
down.
the country. Yeah,
Yes, and what they wanted me to say is that I'm not wanted, but I felt it. It was in the air, according to the questions they asked, that I was so grateful representing all Ukrainians. I am so grateful for Mr. President Trump, that he is trying to negotiate our future, that he is so much concerned with our democracy.
because he's obviously very enthusiastic about democracy generally. Trump.
Yes, but enthusiastic and really like doing something helpful is different. So, but I said that, okay, American guys, imagine if during the Second World War, President Roosevelt, do you have another son there to
No, sorry.
yeah, so I told them, asked them to imagine that if President Roosevelt in during the Second World War invited Hitler to the US, so it would be something like that. Because they asked me, how do you feel about this?
Yeah,
And instead of expressing my gratitude and my excitement on behalf of all Ukrainian nation, I suggested them to imagine Hitler arriving and this red carpet reception during the Second World War, because he's a terrorist. He's an obvious terrorist, and we know that. And what they are trying to create is this distorted reality again, to to have this brainwash for American people and for the rest of the world.
yeah,
So I do not know how it ends, because not every day, but quite often we have something that shocks us, and we think that, okay, nothing else can shock me more. But the next day we read the news and we realize that, okay, that's,
yeah,
let's
I
wait and
mean,
see.
yeah, I
That's
mean,
why I don't know.
you've gone from Bucha to Novakakovka, and it's like thinking like, wow, that they're just gonna blow up dams and flood whole areas, and they don't give a shit. And
Yeah.
apparently, there's still not going to be massive consequences for them. And yeah,
Right. Yes. So.
my impression is a lot of Europe is. I think there's kind of two things going on. I think there's probably a lot of behind the scenes conversations about how to put new alliances together beyond NATO. But at the same time, I think there's also a kind of hope that there's going to be some kind of black swan event,
Yes.
that maybe Putin will die, or there'll be a palace coup, or the Russian people will rise up and overthrow and demand democracy. And I think there's a real reluctance to recognizing what seems to me to be, it seems to me that there's going to be one winner or another. And I don't see that there's any way you can compromise on land or compromise on, give Russia a little bit more of Ukraine and hope for the best. Because if 2014 taught us anything, it's that doesn't work. You give them a bit and then they want a bit more. That salami slicing. And I think there's still a real reluctance to face up to the fact that when you say as long as it takes, people have been saying that for 4 years now without saying what is it.
What is it?
What's the it? As long as what
Yes.
takes. And you've got
Yes.
people like Kaya Kallas, and you've got people in Poland saying, well, there needs to be a Ukrainian victory, but not enough people in, France, Portugal, Italy, Spain, where they feel comfortably removed from what's happening, and they don't think it's going to come for them, even though this week Sweden stopped a Russian drone from approaching a French, aircraft carrier. They still think it's not going to hit them in some way. And so I think you've kind of probably got both of those things going on. And I guess my worry is, if I was Ukrainian, I would start to feel like, how many Ukrainians is Europe prepared to let die before Europe starts panicking and taking things more seriously and providing more weapons, more support? But maybe it's already happening behind the scenes. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes that we don't see.
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. As Ukrainian, I think you have just expressed our feelings quite in the right way. It's how we feel. We feel like a shield, like a live shield that has been protecting Europe for years.
Yeah.
Because Poland will be the next. There are already drones on the NATO territory, and
loads of drones on NATO
this
territory.
probing takes place on regular basis, but there is still no reaction, and Russians keep probing their. What will be next? The extent of that. I do not know. At which they will do anything. Yeah, they will fight back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit like being bullied at school. It's like if you let the kid take your dinner money, next day he'll take your shoes. And at some point, the way you stop that from happening is you hit them bloody hard with a chair. It's like, I often wonder if we have enough Western leaders who were bullied at school, because if they'd been bullied at school, they'd understand bully logic.
Yeah, that's bully logic.
So can I ask one final question, Olena? Because I feel like I've taken a huge amount of your time. What are your personal and professional plans for the rest of the year going forwards? What are you planning to do and hoping to do, and where are you going yourself?
Well, right now I am preparing for my Delta Module 1.
Okay.
Yes, I am going through that reading lists and
It's a big old reading
myself.
list.
Yes, I am immersing myself into the theory of English language teaching. And this time I decided to take this course because I feel the lack of, theoretical background.
Yeah.
Of course, I have this, full collection of Cambridge certificates. I've been preparing people for IELTS and TOEFL for more than a decade. I have CELTA, TKT, so a lot of qualifications, but still I feel this lack and need for more solid theoretical background, because what I'm doing, developing courses for the military, is a really serious thing, and I don't want to waste neither their time nor mine. I want to develop not perfect, but almost perfect courses for our soldiers, which are really effective and useful. That's why teaching cannot be done intuitively. The problem of our modern teaching is that the profession of teacher doesn't require hard qualifications anymore. Anyone who knows the alphabet can name themselves a teacher, which I find really offensive.
Amen.
Yeah, that's why I try to set this example and to be maybe not a role model, but at least some small beacon for other teachers who still hesitate if to increase their qualifications, if to improve their language and professional competences, or it's so expensive. But I think it's worth it, because teachers should be professional. As we have already discussed with you before, I would like to underscore that education and dealing with people's minds, with people's mindsets, is a very huge responsibility, one of the most responsible responsibilities in this world. And we have a favor of working with that. That's why we should treat our job with respect, and we mustn't work intuitively like, I think this activity will be fine. Oh, I saw another teacher do this, without understanding what is beneath, what framework is that, what approach is that, what methodology I'm working according to. So people won't answer if it's they say communicative approach, that's it. So that's why for me, I see it as okay. I see it as my professional goal, and I want to revive my business, because now, honestly, my online center, we are working, yeah, but we are in some, stage of stagnation, because the leader, and I'm supposed to be the leader of this enterprise, is immersed into a military English project, which takes so much of my energy and time and attention. But I would like to again get down to business, and also military project, because I don't see any like equivalence of it in Ukraine. And I know that many people, soldiers, officers, rely on my lessons. They watch them. Maybe they don't do it every day, but when there is a need, they know that there is some reference material, that there is a channel, or there is a person who can address, who can provide them what they need, actually. Because the spheres of military English in Ukraine, which is now one of the most powerful armies, which with this very valuable experience, unique experience, has to be communicatively prepared, armed with language to communicate with the world. So that's my
and I mean, there's obviously going to be much more integration of the Ukrainian armed forces with the rest of Western Europe, and whatever comes after NATO forces going forwards. I know a lot of Ukrainian troops have already been over in the UK. I know that Ukrainian drone operators are working right across Europe with Western drone operators to train them up and everything. So all of that's going to be really, really important for European security going forward.
Yes, so not only for our security and for our strength, but also for Europeans, because today I was watching those news feeds from Iran, and I guessed whose experience were they using in their like unmanned systems, campaigns and missions and operations.
Suddenly people in Dubai wake up and realize shaheeds exist.
Many of them were Russians, by the way, because Dubai is very popular with Russians.
The irony. God. So I feel like I've taken loads of your time already, Olena. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and for putting up with my questions and slip of the tongue on occasion, and for your position and for all the work you're doing. I mean, absolutely amazing stuff you're doing, and the fact that you're still managing to develop as a teacher and as a language user in different languages all through all of this is kind of huge. It speaks volumes for you as a person. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Hey, and Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Take care, Olena, yeah?
Bye.